Undercover single dad found a pregnant girl crying at gas station. It was past midnight. The neon sign of the old gas station flickered against the silence of the small town, casting broken light across the pavement. A man sat inside a beat truck, pretending to check his phone while his little boy slept in the back seat. But this wasn't just any man. He wasn't who he appeared to be. By day, he wore the mask of an ordinary delivery driver, just another tired face in a uniform. In truth, he was an undercover investigator, a man who had seen too much pain, too much darkness, and carried scars far heavier than anyone around him could guess. Tonight, however, something else caught his attention. Across the lot, near the vending machines, a girl sat on the cold concrete. She couldn't have been more than 19. Her knees were pulled tightly to her chest, one hand resting protectively on her swollen stomach. Tears streaked her face, catching in the faint glow of the gas station lights. She looked lost, broken, as though the world had already given up. On her dot, the man whose name was Daniel felt something stir inside him. He'd been trained to notice details, the way people shifted their weight when lying, the subtle signs of fear. But this wasn't about work. This was different. This was human. His first instinct was to drive away. He was already juggling too, much raising a 6-year-old boy on his own after his wife left, working a job that demanded secrecy, hiding his true life from everyone. He didn't have room to invite someone else's storm into his already fragile existence. But as he watched the girl clutch her stomach and cry into her hands, he saw something that made him freeze, an echo of his own past. Years ago, when his wife walked out, leaving him with nothing but a toddler and debts that crushed him like stone. He too had cried in the silence of a parking lot, wondering how to keep going. He knew that look, the look of someone ready to give up. And so, Daniel stepped out of his truck. "Are you okay?" he asked softly, approaching with caution, not wanting to frighten her. The girl flinched, quickly wiping her tears. "I'm fine," she whispered, though her shaking hands betrayed her. "You don't look fine," Daniel replied, lowering himself to her level. "Do you need help?" Her lips trembled as she shook her head. Then, almost inaudibly, she said, "I don't have anywhere to go." The words hit Daniel like a punch to the chest. He learned her name was Emily. She was 20, pregnant, and had been thrown out of her home by her stepfather when he discovered she was expecting. The baby's father had vanished months ago, leaving nothing but empty promises and broken dreams. Emily had been living out of cheap motels until her money ran out. Now she had nowhere, no family, no friends, no plan. Daniel listened in silence, his heart tightening with each word. He didn't know why, but he couldn't walk away. Not this time. That night, Daniel made a choice. He offered Emily a place to stay. Not much, just the spare room in his small rental home, but it was better than a gas station floor. She hesitated at first, suspicious of his intentions. But when she saw the little boy sleeping in the truck, when she noticed Daniel's tired eyes that carried both strength and gentleness, something inside her whispered that maybe, just maybe, she could trust him, so she went with him. The days that followed weren't easy. Emily struggled with fear, guilt, and self-doubt. She worried about being a burden, about bringing chaos into a stranger's life. She had nightmares about raising a child alone, about repeating the cycle of abandonment she had suffered. Daniel, too, wrestled with his own battles. Between his demanding undercover work and raising his son, he questioned if he had made a mistake, bringing Emily into his already fragile world. He was terrified of failing not just his boy, but now this young woman and her unborn child. But little by little, something extraordinary began to happen. Emily started cooking dinner when Daniel came home late from work. She read bedtime stories to his son, who quickly grew attached to her. In return, Daniel drove her to doctor's appointments, stood by her during ultrasounds, and reminded her daily that she wasn't alone. Their broken lives began to stitch together, piece by piece. Then came the storm. Daniel's undercover case escalated. He had been tracking a dangerous ring of people who preyed on vulnerable women, girls, not unlike Emily. One night, his cover was nearly blown, and he returned home bruised, shaken, and more determined than ever to protect the fragile safety he had built. Emily saw his wounds, and for the first time, realized he carried burdens of his own. It humbled her. It connected them in a deeper way. They weren't savior and victim anymore. They were two broken souls fighting to rise. But the greatest test came one winter night. Emily went into labor early. The snowstorm outside made it nearly impossible to reached the hospital. Daniel drove through blinding snow, his son crying in the back seat, Emily screaming in pain beside him. At one point, the truck skidded, nearly sliding off the road. Panic surged through Daniel's chest. He had failed so many times before, but not this time. Not when 2 lives depended on him. He gripped the wheel, prayed under his breath, and pushed forward. Hours later, exhausted and trembling, he held Emily's hand as her baby girl entered the world. The cry of that newborn pierced the night like a song of hope. Emily sobbed, overwhelmed, as Daniel whispered, "You're not alone anymore, neither of you." In the weeks that followed, their little household transformed. What had started as an act of kindness grew into something much deeper. Emily found her strength as a mother. Daniel found healing from his own past wounds. His son found not just a friend, but a new kind of family. Together they discovered that broken beginnings don't define the ending. That family isn't always blood, it's who shows up when the world turns its back. The message: life places us at crossroads where it's easier to walk away than to step in. But sometimes, one choice, one act of compassion can change not just one life, but many. Daniel thought he was saving Emily that night at the gas station, but in truth, she saved him too. Because sometimes, the people we help are the very people sent to heal us. Final inspiring line for viewers: when you feel like giving up, remember your story isn't over. The next chapter might be the one that saves you and someone else.